Saw dudes, remember when I said I would make a Warlock build? I don't, but here's one anyways. Karnstein Armlets got buffed at the start of the season. They now grant Cure ×3 and Restoration ×1 on melee kills. On finisher kills, they grant Cure ×3 and Restoration ×2. This change is pretty great because you can run any subclass and get the effects. We will be using glaives today to easily proc the effect and for the extra damage resistance via shield guard. Just to be clear, when you get a finisher kill, then a melee, you refresh the Restoration ×2 timer. With that out of the way, let's get started. Let's go over the game loop first. Start combat by firing your glaive to get shield energy and eating your shackle grenade to get Weaver's Call. Get close to enemies and melee one of them close to death. Kill them using a finisher. After that, just continue to use your glaive melee to kill enemies and refresh the Restoration ×2 timer. You can continue to use finishers for the added safety and spawn threadlings. Use your grenade normally if necessary. If you need extra damage on a specific enemy, unravel them with an arcane needle. Rinse and repeat. Needle Storm is the only super we can use, but is pretty great for a one-off super. It does fairly good damage against bosses and can perform ad cleanup with the threadlings it spawns. I'm using Healing Rift for the added safety, but if you want raw damage, you can use Empowering Rift. Arcane Needle is useful for proccing Cure and Restoration from range, but is mainly used to unravel targets to increase our outgoing damage. I'm using Shackle Grenades so can knock down targets for easy finishers and melee attacks. The Warlock Pokestick build uses Mindspun, Invocation, and Wanderer as its aspects. Mindspun Invocation allows us to eat our Shackle Grenade to grant ourselves Weaver's Trance. While Weaver's Trance is active, kills create a suspending explosion with a 5-meter radius. The Wanderer causes destroyed tangles to explode in a suspending burst with a 7-meter radius. Tangles track enemies when thrown and aren't affected by gravity. Also, Threadling kills now spawn tangles. The fragments for this build are Thread of Evolution, Finality, Generation, and Warding. Evolution causes Threadlings to move faster and farther and deal more damage. Finality causes finishers to spawn a Threadling. Generation grants grenade energy for every damage instance we deal to enemies. And finally, Thread of Warding grants Woven Mail for 10 seconds upon picking up an Orb of Power. Let's cover the bathrobe gear. First off, the helmet had Harmonic Siphon, Special Ammo Finder, and Font of Wisdom. Special Ammo Finder can be swapped out for Heavy Ammo Finder if need be. On Karnstein Armlets, there was Font of Focus, Heavy Handed, and Impact Induction. For the goofy looking gown, I equipped melee damage resistance, lucent blades, and a variable resistance mod. The slippers had Recuperation, Innervation, and Absolution. Lastly, the bond had Bomber, Reaper, and Proximity Ward. For this build, having high resilience isn't a requirement. You can easily get away with using 70 since we have Woven Mail and a glaive shield backing us up. If you need the extra safety, you can use more than that. As for discipline, do not go above 70 since we are using a Font of Focus mod on Karnstein Armlets. You can dump the rest of the stat points into strength and recovery. Consider subscribing if you found the video helpful. It helps me out a lot. Today's build has 2 weapon loadouts. Please skip around to find out what you like. Weapon loadout 1 uses Rufus's Fury, Excalibur, and Cataphract GL3. This has been my go-to loadout for a lot of builds, so I'm really sorry if you're getting tired of hearing it. Rufus's Fury is perfect for this loadout because it meshes with the fragments. The usual Demolitionist and Hatchling roll accomplishes 2 things. 1, it ensures that we always have a Shackle Grenade ready so that we can have Weaver's Call active 24/7. 2, it spawns Threadlings via Hatchling, which deal more damage due to Thread of Evolution and refunds even more grenade energy on kills that they achieve. They provide additional ad clear from a distance and can put a dent in tankier targets. While there are other Strand primary options, this gun stands head and shoulders above the rest. I highly recommend farming out all the patterns when you get the chance. The Excalibur is becoming one of my most used weapons this season, and it's all due to the great flexibility it provides in gameplay. The basic glaive shield provides a ton of safety to the build, which is perfect since we will be playing very close to dangerous targets. Holding the shield provides a Void Overshield that grants 50% damage resistance on top of Woven Mail and our Resilience stat. This Void Overshield can be applied to allies if they are within about 15 meters. While a Void Overshield is active, melee attacks with Excalibur will deal 20% more damage. While using this weapon, don't be too concerned with keeping the Void Overshield active. Rather, focus on keeping enemies suspended to reduce incoming fire. Cataphract GL3 is a strand grenade launcher that will cover our boss DPS. When facing a big boss or something that needs to be dead fast, this is the weapon that we pull out. I'm currently using a roll with quick launch, spike grenades, auto-loading holster, and bait and switch. Even though this build emphasizes close quarters combat, please make sure you don't blow yourself up with this gun like I do. If you just want pure ad clear and something that synergizes well with Weaver's Call, you can use a Demolitionist and Chain Reaction roll. This will wipe the floor with ads and proc tons of suspending bursts. Weapon loadout 2 uses Super Cluster, Callus Mini Tool, or the Ikelos SMG in Winter Bite. Super Cluster is the newest Strand shotgun that was added at the start of Season of the Wish. It is a precision frame slug shotgun that comes with a very interesting perk pool. We're looking at a gun that will give Heritage a run for its money. The role I'm currently interested in is Arrowhead Break, Assault Mag, Reconstruction, and Cascade Point. Arrowhead Break is a strange choice, but straightens out the horrible recoil stat of the gun. Assault Mag increases the rate of fire by 5 rounds per minute up to 70. Reconstruction can overflow the magazine to 12 rounds over time. And finally, Cascade Point increases the RPM to 116 rounds per minute. This combo turns Super Cluster into Super Busted. It becomes a burst DPS machine, and while it doesn't exceed until its return, it does have higher total damage. If you're not a fan of the fast fire rate meme, you can go with 4 times a charm and Vulnerable Weapon. It's a very straightforward roll and doesn't require us to jump through any hoops. If you're not looking for boss DPS at all and just want a reliable shotgun, you can go with Threat Detector and Surrounded. Callous Mini Tool is one of my favorite energy weapons. I use a Threat Detector and Surrounded roll so I can deal with trash adds a bit faster. I don't really use the weapon that much though, since the rest of the build can deal with adds relatively easily. Still, if you want a bit of AoE damage and extra safety, you can use an Unrelenting and Incandescent roll. I don't suggest trying to make Scorch work because it will be a waste of time when compared to more direct forms of damage with our glaive. If you are looking for a utility primary, you might want to look at the iGlows SMG. I love using my Shoot to Loot and Volt Shot roll. Shoot to Loot reloads all weapons from reserves when shooting bricks, and Volt Shot stuns overload champions. Volt Shot works just like Unravel, providing additional damage to targets and enemies around them. I find it to be the better Ad Clear perk when compared to Incandescent. This is just something to chew on, just use whatever weapon you like. Lastly, we have Winterbite, a glaive that I recently covered in my Worm God Crest video for Titans. This glaive hits very hard, and while we don't have the melee damage multipliers to back it up, we have other means of getting the damage and survivability we want. It shoots out a freeze orb that fires explosive projectiles every half a second towards non-frozen enemies. The orb itself detonates on impact with the surface or enemy dealing heavy damage and freezing enemies. Freeze orb hits grant Winterbite 25% shield energy. After playing with the glaive for a pretty long time, I came to realize that the orb is extremely good at clearing rooms. Just fire it in a line where it can shoot multiple submunitions at enemies. We will be using the melee attack most of the time, so conserve the attack for when it's needed. And that is it. The changes to Karnstein Armlets are great, and I'm happy that more exotics are subclass neutral. Adding flexibility to builds is something that I'll always appreciate. The only thing that I want from Bungie now is more weapon diversity. While Super Cluster does build a role as a Strand precision frame shotgun, I would have liked to see a craftable Stasis or Strand glaive. We have a lot of redundancy in slots at the moment, and I don't really get why. I'll quit ranting while I'm ahead. I hope you guys enjoyed my first Warlock build of the season. I know you guys have been waiting for one, and I do have more cooking. With that being said, thank you for watching, and happy farming.